home early, and so yeah. And then half of them showed up today with the flu.
You didn't say that. I'm sorry about that.
Good afternoon.
Hey, y'all.
Hey, Dr. Lamb.
How are you?
Good.
Y'all don't seem too excited.
We tired of teaching after Halloween.
I bet it was crazy today. All them little imps came by last night. We gave them about a pickup truck load of candy. I hope you that teach any of them today. I'm telling you what. They were wide open last night. We have we do pizza and costumes, and then do a parade through the neighborhood here. And so it was short last night because it was school night. So they didn't stay out near as late as they normally do. It was rather intense for the first hour or so, but after that it kind of slacked off. Kids in this neighborhood, we do Twixt and Snickers and Milky Way and Three Musketeers, but then the other half, they like Airheads, that taffy type stuff. They love that stuff. And so
Skittles.
yeah.
My assistant said this morning during hall duty, she said, I saw a kid come in with 3 backpacks and one of the backpacks was nothing but candy. And the whole thing was full of candy.
Yeah. Oh, that's not good.
No.
That's not good. Yeah, I bet they were just on their head all day today. All right, so a couple of housekeeping items. Steve will join us here in a few minutes. He's over with recruiting tonight, but he'll be back about 10 after, so we'll do that. So a couple housekeeping items. And so Jessica called me on Sunday right during the overtime of the ball game that I was trying to explain to my wife. Now, my wife is a Panthers fan, but she doesn't understand a lot about football, so I have to set aside time to explain what's happening. And then she didn't understand the overtime rules. And so I had to try to explain those to her, which they change every year. But anyway, so here's the deal on case studies. Your teams will put together 4 case studies in PowerPoints. When we start on Saturday morning, when we meet in a week and a half or whatever it is, every 2 weeks, all 1s will go, then all 2s and all 3s and all 4s in terms of we'll do all 4 groups will do case study 1. And we'll compare and contrast. And, did this one have something and that one didn't have, those kinds of things. And so, and then when we finish case study 1, we'll go to 2 and everybody. Then so the team that went first will go last, and we'll rotate through so everybody gets a chance to go first. So I can yell and throw stuff at everybody equally. And then we'll move on through that. And then you'll need to upload that presentation in your assignment Dropbox, and everybody will need to upload the group one in order to get credit for it. You know, the way Blackboard works, everybody gets an individual grade. So everybody's got to put the same one. So we'll have those. And then after, at some point, you'll write a reflection of the process. Now, you can reflect on what you learned from the case, or you can reflect on how your team worked together, or you can reflect on, all the above. It doesn't have to be, somewhere the limit's a half page. It can be less than that. But, what did you take away from the process of working on that case? Did people let their own personal truth influence, the presentation, objective truth? I mean, I had one the other night in my little group that I do on Monday nights when they did the first case study. When they started their presentation, one of the fellows who's a coach, he just completely went off he just completely went off the mark, and and put some things into his part that the group hadn't agreed on. They were very clear in their reflections. We didn't discuss this in our group meeting. We don't know why Willie went there. I mean, that's the kind of stuff that's good to know in the reflection, because Willie completely went off the mark. So, for example, in the first case with Bobby and the cheating, Willie's notion is we'll involve the coaches to punish Well, why in the world would coaches be punishing a kid for an academic issue? And also, if we gave Bobby a punishment, an academic consequence for his cheating, what under the law would we call it if the coach punished him too? Would that be double jeopardy? It would be. And that would be stepping outside of due process. And so that's the kind of thing that your reflection should tell me. Yes, this is a group, we decided this, and then somebody kind of went off on their own and had some different ideas, or, my group that's in 604 this semester that I'm working with on Wednesday nights, one of the things that we talked about this past week is that a lot of them advocated that, during the first case study, that we should support the teacher. The teacher was right. That's not what the law said. That was just their opinion based on their teachers, and they thought they all support one of their own. Well, that's incorrect. And so that's what we're talking about here, is these case studies are rooted in law. What does the law say you can and can't do, or should or shouldn't do? And that's how they will be evaluated, not on Dale's opinion. Now, I'm going to ask you in the first one, what should we do with that teacher? That's going to be part of what I'm going to ask is all right, you've gone through this, you know what the law is, you've seen what federal law she's violated, what state law, what local board policy. What are you going to do now, hero? It's going to be that kind of thing. Would you give her, would you write her up? Would you put her on an action plan? Would you move for dismissal? I mean, or would you just say, don't do it again? I mean, what are you going to do as a base, but it's got to be rooted in, these are the laws, these are the things that happen. So that's what we're looking for here. I'm looking for, have you done your research? Have you dug, do you know what laws are in play here? Now, to that end, Mandy asked me the last time we were with, and so there's a couple of good documents. I haven't uploaded them yet because I didn't want to create a stir. Let me share my screen. There's a couple of really good documents for you South Carolina people, if I can find them here. This is a really good one, School Leadership Executive Institutes, School Law for Administrators, School Law and Ethics, just like we do. We look at, remember, for each of the 4 cases, you do the law, and then you look at the 4 ethical paradigms: care, justice, critique, and profession. You look at those, and that's what they've done. South Carolina has put together this wonderful document. Now, it's too long. It's 40-something pages, slides long. But it speaks to the kinds of things that we talk about here. School records, FERPA, disciplinary records, matriculation reporting, crimes, all those kinds of things, corporal punishment, crime reporting, all the stuff. They kind of hit it all. This entire course here, that we're under ethical issues, what those kinds of things. And so this is a good one. I'm going to upload it under tonight. And then here is the title that we're most interested in South Carolina, just like the 288, 115C, 288C that we do for North Carolina. This is the equivalent in South Carolina. It's under Title 59, Education, Chapter 24. Mandy asked me to do it, but now I don't normally put these in because there's a little quirk in how these programs work. North Carolina, we are an EPP, an educational program provider in North Carolina, because we have a brick and mortar. We do not have a brick and mortar in South Carolina. And so you get your license in South Carolina based on that we are CAPE accredited. So we have to be careful not to portray that we are a provider in South Carolina. So I do not have any of my folks put South Carolina documents in our shells, as I have them later. But we don't in no way want to portray that we are a state college in South Carolina. We are not. We're a private college in North Carolina. Now we work, and you will get your license based on that we're CAPE nationally accredited, not based on that we're a South Carolina college. And so I have to be careful about having South Carolina materials in our shells, because our competitors complain that we're portraying ourselves as something we're not, and we've not ever said that we were a South Carolina school. We are a North Carolina school. But That's what we're looking for. And so these cases are legal cases. There is legal precedent in all of them. The second case that you will have, the Leandro case, as I told you, is a national case. It is a reference for national school funding. And so, you know, it's pretty widely known in the business throughout the United States. The Leandro case, it is the bellwether case for funding. And so again, you got to know all the laws, the quirks, the ins and outs, and how to interpret that. Okay. So any questions that you have for me on your case studies, what we're going to be doing that Saturday morning, we'll have breakfast. We'll get started. You know, group one will start with case one, and then we'll have group two do case one, then group three, then group four. We'll wrap that up, and then we'll go to case two, and we'll reverse the order so that everybody gets an opportunity to get to go first in one of the case studies. And then you will write a reflection, which means afterwards, of what you learned from doing this. Now, a word of advice. This is your opportunity to get up in front, and you know, this is again like you're presenting to your staff, that you're in a leadership position and you're getting up and you're presenting to the staff. So you have consumed all this information and you have synthesized it, and now you are presenting it to the staff in terms of this is what you're supposed to do or not do. This is not opinion stuff. This is law stuff. This isn't, you could do this or you could do that. No, we will do this, this, and this. And this is why this is no, we can't do this, or this is why we will do this, because the law says we'll do X, Y, and Z. None of this stuff is opinion stuff. Now, I'm going to ask you what your opinion is on the first one in terms of what we should do with the teacher, but that's going to be an opinion question. But that one also is based in law as well. And I'm going to see how well you have synthesized all this information in what you tell me. But again, this is not opinion stuff. This is, the law says we'll do this, and the law says we won't do that. All right. So that's that for that piece. All right, let's talk about some of your activities. Helena, are you on? I see your camera is off. Are you with us? I guess not. No,
I am. I have the flu.
Well, I think I've got it too. Boy, you know, it'd be a good thing for me. It wouldn't hurt for me to drop a few pounds. So well, then we'll skip you tonight then. But I wanted to point out that Helena was talking about, and I don't want to throw the people that she works with under the bus, is in one of her responses about discipline and due process is that in small districts, people are afraid to make reports. And that's one of the things that I want to for us to talk about tonight is we need to make sure that we understand that as school administrators, we don't handle things in-house. You know, handling things in-house is metaphor for covering up, not acting, ignoring, gaslighting. Oh, that wasn't as bad, or that they didn't mean that. You know, fill in the blank here. And that's why on all these things that we talk about, first thing I tell you to do is call the law, get the police involved. There is no handling things, you know, in-house and covering them up. That's the point of in-house things, is so that people won't know, or we can put pressure on people not to report or not to push it, or, you know, and generally what we're doing is we're protecting adults' bad behavior. It's generally what we're doing. And Helena had a very good example of that, where, you know, a person was reported for abusing a child, and they didn't bother. Oh, he didn't mean it, and no investigation, no police report, no nothing. And that's one of the things that I'll remind all of you, and I think I did last time we talked. A parent has the right within 90 days to go to a magistrate and file charges, and so that's the kind of stuff that happens when schools seek to cover up whatever goes on in their building. Especially if it's sexual in nature or abusive in nature. We don't want that to be known. It makes us look bad. And so Helena brought a good example. So you can go to discussion board and read that one. But what I want you all to talk about tonight is when you've gone out and observed due process or a discipline incident, what did you see in your school? And I'm going to go around the horn. For those of you who haven't, just let me know that. But tell me what your takeaway was when you saw discipline cases being done in school. When I say what was your takeaway, were they working toward restorative justice and trying to amend the kids' behavior, or was it simply punitive? Okay. Sarah Sellers, you're at the top left of my screen. Have you done that activity yet?
I have. My biggest takeaways were that all stakeholders were involved. I didn't write this kid up, but I do have the kid. But I will say that they had statements from the teacher who wrote him up. They also said to the student, well, why did you do this? What could we have done better? And then they also spoke to the family and were able to tell them what he said, the teacher's point of view, and then some feedback from the parents. So I did like that everyone who was in the school community was involved. And I do feel like it was restorative rather than punitive.
That's what we're trying. Thank you, Sarah. That's what we're trying to work toward. One of the things that we have to be careful of in schools is that we're working toward finding quick and easy solutions and trying to fix problems rather than do the right thing for kids. For example, when we talk about the intervention process, it's a 90-day process prior to the 90-day EC process. We talked about that. What we have to be careful of, and we talked about this last week, is that we're not just doing that intervention process so that we can hurry up and get to the testing part, so that we can get those kids off the roll. I mean, what is the purpose of that intervention? Is it just to speed through it, to put checks in the box, or is it to actually get some support and help for that child? We can see that really, really easily with intervention. That, our purpose is to try to intervene and not let the kid fail up front, is to try to help that kid. Unfortunately, with discipline, we think discipline is just the way to mete out punishment. It's just to punish the kid for their behavior. With the whole notion, again, is it's the same as intervention. What can we do to prevent and to help this child so that this won't continue to be a problem? And it's all about that collaboration. It's all about restorative justice. It's not about the punishment. It's about coming together to try and find solutions to amend the behavior. And that's what due process is supposed to lead you to do. But, we can misuse or abuse any of that. Stephanie, I want to talk to you most specifically. Tell us what you do for a living, Stephanie.
I'm an assistant principal.
So how often do you deal with discipline?
Every day.
Every day. Every day, every day, every day. That would
Every
be
day,
the
every day.
appropriate answer. Every day, every day, every day.
Yeah.
And so what is your perspective on why you do what you do, or how long it takes you to do what you do?
Of course, it depends on the incident, but the hardest thing, or why we have to the hardest thing is just doing your due diligence to make sure that you have all of the facts, because there are many things that you deal with where you didn't have an adult witness, and you're depending on cameras, and the stories are very different, or every single story you get is different. And so those take the longest, and we just have to check all the boxes. Like, we have to make sure we've got all of the statements. And then if you can't prove it, I mean, if nothing, comes down to being able to prove that so-and-so is, said this to somebody or did this to somebody, then you can't, there's not really much of anything that you can do. You have to pretty much be able to prove it these days.
Yeah. Now, the standard is different, it's preponderance of evidence, but still you have to have very strong evidence to do that. But I guess my point, and I don't want to belabor this, is, as Stephanie just said, because she has to deal with discipline every day and because it's long and drawn out, because of due process rights, what we tend to find is that we process discipline just to get it off the books. And we don't think down the road, what can we do, or what should we be doing to try to ameliorate these kinds of incidents? What can we do to help this kid? It just becomes like the delicatessen next. You take a number, wait in line, and we process you just in it. And see, what happens is, if that is your function, that's how you process discipline. This is the big reveal here. The more you do that, the more you'll have to do.
We actually practice restorative practice in Burke County, and we do PD with staff about, where we're shooting for like 80% to be preventative, like knowing the kids, it's building the relationships, it's the just knowing the why behind what's going on, seeing it coming before it gets there. And then, the 20% that we actually deal with are things that can't be foreseen.
Right. But the faster and more efficient you get, and the more corners you cut, the more you have to do. It's unfortunate. If you'll invest the time in restorative practices and training teachers and working with conflict resolution, those kinds of things, if you'll do that, I'm not telling you that you still won't have to process discipline, but it will change the culture of your building. You're still going to have to deal with that 20%. But what you don't want is have to deal with the other 80% on a regular basis too. If you can just get it down to that 20%, then you're okay. And that's the notion here is don't get so caught up in just, next, like a barbershop or a delicatessen, that you spend time with that kid, you collaborate, you make sure you try to find a consequence that leads you to where you need to be with that kid to amend that behavior. And you work with your teachers. That's the whole notion of discipline. That's the idea here is that we can't just run it like an assembly line. Each one of these kids, we have to stop and look at each one of these kids. And so that hopefully when you went out and you talked to your assistant principal about processing discipline, that's one of the things that they talk to you about, wanting to get it right, wanting to change the kids' behavior, trying to change the culture of the building. And not just, just worried about making sure I give them all the same and just keep the line moving. And sometimes that's what you get assistant principals to say. We don't want you to be one of those. We want you to be concerned about changing behavior. We want you to be concerned about the culture of your building. And it's so easy in following due process that it just becomes about, an assembly line kind of thing. And you've got to resist that. So thank you both for that. I see Dr. Laws has joined us. He's been over with Dr. Stone for a few minutes recruiting. I hope he got some positive feedback.
They're a wonderful group, and we hope that several will join us.
Yeah.
I don't know if they will or not, but they all were praying for all of you, because I told them that Dale Lamb was on and they are all MELS people, and they knew what you were facing. So I just want you to know that you're in their thoughts and prayers as we go forward tonight.
All right, sounds good. All right, so let me share my screen and let's see what this was.
While he's doing that, I got to tell you, it was just a really, really rough night last night for Halloween. I had prepared for all of these children to come, And so I bought a whole lot of candy, and I still have a whole lot of candy. These churches that do, I guess they're everywhere, that do the trunk or treat thing, and it is really, and I think it's a wonderful thing, good, safe venue, and the parents, I think, take the kids there. But we just did not have any traffic last night, and you know, while I was preparing to join y'all, I did have 2 packs of M&Ms, and they were very good. So,
no, I was telling them my story. We had our pizza party and our costume and parade last night, but I was supposed to tell them after that, we didn't have anybody that came from outside the neighborhood last night.
yeah.
We were done in an hour. Now, we gave out a pickup truckload of candy in that hour, but after that, the normal next 2 hours, we didn't have anybody last night. Of course, the weather and Monday night, I guess, but you're right. Other than the event that we had here, there's not a lot of folks out for Halloween. We normally have cars just lined up through the neighborhood, people coming in from outside. We didn't have any of that last night. It was unusual. All right, so let me share my screen. And let's see, I want to go to this. So here's our disciplinary data reporting manual that says, you know, we talked about this before. We organize around incidents. We report incidents and not outcomes. I want to spend a few more minutes with this tonight before we move on. And you know, we report incidents, and we go back to our acts of violence here that count against us in our persistently dangerous calculation. So I want somebody to remind me. 2001, No Child Left Behind said 2 things: that kids didn't have to go to 2 kinds of schools. What 2 kinds of schools do children not have to go to, according to No Child Left Behind?
Consistently low performing.
That is correct. That's one. On the other side of the aisle, somebody, anybody, persistently dangerous schools. So children don't have to go to consistently low performing academically, and that would be less than 50% on grade level, or at proficiency. That's how low performing is calculated. How is persistently dangerous calculated? Somebody, anybody? Well, this manual will tell you that. What this manual will tell you is that 1/2 of 1%, you can't exceed 1/2 of 1% of your population committing violent offenses. The 9 violent offenses are on my screen right now: homicide, assault resulting in serious bodily injury, assault involving use of a weapon, rape, sexual offense, sexual assault, kidnapping, robbery with a dangerous weapon, and taking indecent liberty with a minor. You get one of these incidents for every 200 kids that you have in your building. If you exceed that threshold, you will be on the persistently dangerous watch list for the next year. All right, you say, well, how do we do this? Well, you have to report these incidents. Now, you have to know, you have to report them to law enforcement, but you also have to report them in Power School as well. And so when we get over here to our incidents, we see these prefixes right here. And if one has a PD in front of it, that's going to count against you. It's the 9 we just talked about. ROs, you have to report to law enforcement. It's a reportable offense. And so you report yourself. One of the things that can happen is you report it, adjudicate it, but then later go back and take it out. Your district will get a report if you do that. The state will know as well. And so you can't have buyer's remorse.
And these are reported on the school report card in South Carolina.
That is correct. They're reported in North Carolina as well. And so let me stop my share here. So you got to understand here, folks, when these bad things happen in your building, we talked about this, antecedent behavior. If you can stop the little things before they become the big things, but when they become the big things, you still got to report them. There is no, we'll handle that in the house. you've got to tell it, you've got to report it. It's federal law, it's state law that you have to report these things. Now, I'll use an example. We had a principal of one of the small schools in CMS, had an assault with serious injury. And we adjudicated it and went all the way through and put the kid out for a year and did all of that. But then when it got the automatic board appeal, when we went to pull the documentation out of Power School, it was gone. She'd gone in and changed it. She made sure the kid got prosecuted, but then she didn't want the punishment to come back to the school. And so she went in and took it out. And of course, we made her restore that and do that, but then we decided we didn't need her anymore. She had to find something else to do. I mean, that's what we're talking about here. These incidents are serious business. I had one at Morgan School where the principal reported it as a simple assault, not a reportable offense. And so when the staff member who was injured did workman's comp, it was denied because he said, this was a simple assault. You weren't, there's no permanent injury or no serious injury. We're not paying your workman's comp claim. And, and I went over and talked with the principal and I said, you do realize this man's had 6 surgeries basically to reattach his arm. And she said, yeah, but he'll eventually get use of it again. What? I mean, that's the kind of thing that you get into here. And so we had to part ways with her as well. These are the kinds of things, these big incidents that happen, these big acts of violence. Yes, they are punitive to you in your school and your faculty, but it's even more punitive to you as an individual administrator if you hide them, cover them up, try to handle them in-house. We handle that ourselves. No, the law is very clear. Federal and state law, you will report those things. And if you go to the watch list, you have a year to get yourself off. 2 things will happen when you go to that watch list year. One is in the spring of the year, you'll have an audit. That assessment inventory that I gave you to assess your facilities twice a month that you're building, that's the one the state uses when they come and do your audit. It's exactly the same one. That's where it came from. And then the second thing is if your audit is good and your numbers are down, then you go off the watch list, no harm, no foul. But if either of those goes bad, either you don't pass your audit or your numbers go bad a second year, then you become a persistently dangerous school. And most school districts no longer are offering the option to bus kids to another school. They're simply reconstituting that school, just like a low performing school. And so this is high stakes. This disciplinary data that I keep, talking to you about and belaboring the point, it is very high stakes. It's the same stakes as if you're low performing academic. That's the law. You have to understand that. And so part of the No Child Left Behind and part of Persistently Dangerous, part of that too is that every school district in every state has to have a program for teacher retention. North Carolina uses the Teacher Working Conditions Survey every other year. That's their initiative to try to shape the culture of schools and try to retain teachers. But I can tell you right now, and this is kind of where the bottom line on this: if you allow criminality in your building, if you don't deal with these big incidents, teachers will leave in droves, even before the pandemic. If teachers feel like they're unsafe, if bad things are happening to them or kids, if you're sweeping all the big stuff under the rug because you don't want to report persistently dangerous activities going on in your building, you will not be, I don't care how many teacher working condition surveys you have, you will not be able to keep people. That just will not happen. People will not work in places that they feel unsafe. So there's so many, I'm building this case for you, that there are so many bad things that can happen to you if you lie, underreport, don't report, try to shade your data. But even beyond that, it affects negatively the culture of your building. So I'm going to go to Steve now and let him talk to you about that for a minute as well.
Yeah, so I think that we've kind of touched on this each and every time we've been together. We understand, all of us, that you have students and others in your school that disrupt. That's just a part of it. And again, I think the beauty of leadership, the beauty of being in school-based administration, is that opportunity to set a culture for the school. And I think that you know, when Dale talks about some principals who chose to alter reporting data, and then he would get to go pay the visit and remove the principal. You know, does that happen? Absolutely, it happens. But what we hope instead is that you know, one of the things we preach in leadership programs is this, you know, this opportunity to let the faculty get to know you as the leader, and that they buy into your vision, that they buy into your persona, that they buy into here's where we are and here's where we can go. And it is one of the really gratifying things when it works. And you know, I can only speak for those that I saw do it successfully, and you do establish that culture. It does not mean that violent acts don't happen, and it does not mean that students don't misbehave and faculty doesn't misbehave and parents don't come in and misbehave. What it does mean is that there just seems to be this surrounding element of the good people that want to push out the bad behavior. And so I think that's a long way. I think Dale we have to share with you, here are the things we have to report, and here's the ramifications of it. But we also, I want to be the encourager to say, I have seen leader after leader, and hopefully you have as well, go into schools and change the culture of the school. And there is nothing more gratifying than to see that happen. And so, yes, you got two things you got to worry about: student performance academically and student behavior. And both are equally important. Both will get you a bad mark as a school, but both will get you the kind of marks you want as a school if you can get both of them to happen. And it would be an interesting conversation of which is more important. And I think most of us, because and when I look at you and look at the challenging jobs all of you have, I imagine most of you say, if we don't have a school culture that allows us to teach and allows students to learn, it will not happen that we are an academically high performing school. So that's my spiel. There's nothing profound about it. It is what is fun about being a school-based administrator. You have so much power to make these things happen. Now, it may take a little while to do it, but you can make it happen. That's it, Dale. I didn't have anything profound, but you know, I've just seen it. And you know, it'd be neat to talk to people in this cohort to say, have you been in a school where a leader came in and turned the culture around?
Yeah. And so that's what, before you joined us tonight, we talked about restorative justice, that we don't do discipline just for the numbers or because we have to resist just running kids through like an assembly line. But the whole notion here is we can change how we process discipline. We can change the culture of our building. We can do it that way. Just processing and punishing kids will not get you where you want to be. You can neither punish nor reward yourself to good behavior in a school. It takes restorative justice, the notion here. And the idea that I'll hide this stuff or I'll handle it in-house, will be a detriment to you changing the culture and getting the culture in that building where you need it to be. It will hinder you in that. Is, you know, this notion that we'll handle this in house and nobody will know, and everybody will know. Nobody operates in silence. So back to our manual here. I'm not going to go through any more of it, but back to our manual. So also under tonight, where I have this manual on our tab, I also have this video right here that explains the entire manual. It's about an hour long. Let's see, it's 59 minutes long. The DPI put this one out. So if you can interpret manuals, read the manual. If you can't, you might want to watch the video, but there is a video that matches this manual that I have for you that Department of Public Instruction puts out. You should read this, and you should watch this video to get an understanding of what your responsibility is on the reporting. Okay, so I can close that now. So we've already covered that and that. We've done that. And let me move this out of the way. Okay. All right. We've already talked about No Child Left Behind, and that's where that comes from. And so I just had that for that reference. So what I want to talk a few minutes about now, I guess, is this. Have we talked in depth about EVOS? All right, so we're going to talk about EVOS tonight. All right. Mandy, do y'all use EVOS in Spartanburg? Y'all use another program called SLOs in South Carolina. It's the same thing.
Yes, we do. Yes.
It's the same thing. It's your growth data. So when we talk about teacher evaluations, I suspect that you folks are, being the instructional wizards that you are, that you know a whole lot about going into a teacher's classroom and evaluating her lesson or his lesson. Would that be fair? I'd say so. But part of what we're doing now in school administration and the thrust going forward is not just evaluating teachers on the basis of how well they present lessons, but more importantly, how much their students are learning. And so we are transitioning to a more growth model rather than a comparative model. In comparative accountability, we're comparing with other groups. A lot of that is who you get, not what you do with them. Growth accountability speaks to individual kids. Did that kid grow a whole year? And so every child for a particular test, a state test in North and South Carolina, again, it's EVOS in North Carolina, it's SLOs in South Carolina, that kid has a score that he needs to make on a test to show a year's growth, that teacher. And so what we're really looking for is that 85% of the kids in any teacher's class make a year's growth, and that 85% of the teachers in any school show 85% of the teachers make positive growth with their kids, and 85% of the kids in a particular teacher's room make growth. That's the 85-85 rule. That's what we're looking for on the growth model that we're looking for. Now, we are shifting more and more and more of our teacher evaluation system, where we're making the count more and more in terms of performance of students rather than just presentation of teachers. And so that's one of the things that is emerging now, and it's taken on a new urgency because of COVID. What happened during COVID? What happened to test scores during COVID?
They tanked.
Boy, like off of a cliff, didn't they?
Mm-hmm.
And so test scores have come back to the forefront again, as if they weren't already there. But now we're all about our kids making growth again. Are they growing a year? I mean, that's become the hot topic because we lost so much, about 10% during COVID. You know, the deal now is can we get that growth back? Can we get back where we were? And so going forward, you know, about 25% generally has been of a teacher's overall evaluation has been growth of their kids. I would say it's going to move past that pretty quickly. We're going to be, some states are already up in the 75% range. I'd say North and South Carolina are going to head that way very quickly. So you're going to need to be well versed in value added, growth model, linear regressions going forward in terms of how you evaluate teachers. It's not just going to be about input anymore. It's going to be about outcomes as well. So what I'm going to work you through tonight are two different sets of documents for how this program works. The first one is going to be about how the actual regression works. The problem that you get into when you start talking to teachers about being responsible for the growth of kids is they'll scream and yell that my kids are too low, or this kid's over here are easier to get growth out of, all those old wives' tales that we've heard over the years. But if you know how the growth model works, either EVOS or SLOs, and how that score that kid's got to make has been determined, then you can dispel some of those notions that when you're working with teachers to get them to understand that we're going to be held accountable for student performance, more so than we've ever been held before. And that we can't just say, well, I did my part, you know, I was pitching, it's not my problem if they weren't catching. That's not going to be good enough anymore. We're going to have to convince our faculties that they bear responsibility whether these kids achieve or not, that it's not just a simple input question, it's an output or outcome question as well. So let's talk about how we end up with a particular score that a kid needs to make to show a year's growth. And so here's the scenario. Let me share my screen and we'll get started. All right. So for 20 years and now over 30, states collected performance data on kids. We fed it all into a big analysis of variance, and we came out with 10 variables that affect a kid's test score. And so we made a regression equation, and it looks simply like this. We had all those dependent variables, and then it affects the independent variable. It's pretty easy. All of those specific dependent variables. And so here is what affects test scores. Race, 30% of the variance in a kid's test score is dependent upon his race. Mother's education, father's income, teacher, we always consider to be 10%. School district 5, school 5, grade 5, age 5, gender 5, previous test scores 5. Those are the 10 variables that affect a kid's test score right there. And this is from over 30 years of test score data. And so mother's education, why is that so much? And father's income, they kind of work together. If father makes enough money, mother sits at home with the kid, and mama does lap time with young children. Teacher, we assume that teacher is good, you get 10%. And so everything is controlled for here except for the teacher. That's the only thing that the school has any input over. And so we can isolate how much value that teacher adds, whether the kid makes growth or not. And so here's how it works though. So here's an actual example. Jamar is a 3rd grade student in Charlotte Mecklenburg schools. His dependent variables are, he's black, so he gets 20 out of 30. If he was white, he'd get 30 out of 30. And if he were Hispanic, he'd get 15 out of 30. Now that's not racially oriented, that's performance oriented. We're talking about those subgroups. Mother less than a high school diploma, 5 out of 15. If she'd had beyond a 4-year degree, it would have been 15 out of 15. No father in home, 0 out of 15. Father's income in excess of 150,000 would be 15. Teacher 10, we always assumed a teacher at 10. CMS 5 because it's a high wealth district. If it'd been a low wealth district, it would have been a 2. Billingsville was a takeover school, so that's a 0. A high growth school would have been 5. Grade 5, not a repeater, so he got 5 points. All right, now he was developmentally delayed, so he's a year older for his grade. He's not been retained, but he's a year behind, so he gets 3 out of 5. Gender, we give him 5 because it's a math test, and 4 for a female, and we do the opposite if it were a reading test, based on historical scores of boys and girls taking reading and math tests. Previous scores too, he was not on grade level according to in-class data coming out of 2nd grade. So his equation looks like this: 20 plus 5 plus 0 plus 10 plus 5 plus 0 plus 5 plus 3 plus 5 plus 2 equals 55%. So he's got to get 55% of the questions right on the 3rd grade math test in order to show a year's growth. There's a possible of 180 questions, time 0.55. He's got to get 99 out of 180 for him to show a year's growth in math in 3rd grade. It's just that simple. That's how the equation works. So when teachers say, oh, they just pulled this number out of a hat or some other part of their body, no, they didn't. We know all these things about the child. We know every one of these things, all these dependent variables. We know these things. And so we simply, have a formula that predicts what his score has got to be. And so it's the same degree of difficulty to make growth with a low kid as it is a high kid or a middle kid, because their score is not group specific, it's not categorical, it's individualized to that individual kid. And one of the things that you're going to have to understand going forward in school administration is this is going to be more and more and more important, that we're able to figure out how much value teachers are adding to individual kids and how much value schools are adding to the population in their community. So we need for teachers 85% of the kids in their room to make growth, and we need for 85% of the teachers in our building to make growth with their kid. And so more and more of a teacher's observation is going to be about performance rather than input, manipulating the elements of the lesson. We're going to be looking more and more at that performance piece. The pressure that COVID has brought on us in terms of the regression we've seen in test scores is just about unbearable now. I mean, everybody is screaming and yelling that we've got to do something about this. And so we're going to see more and more pressure on teachers for performance, for outcomes, rather than, did they have a good lesson? And so
it's funny that you're talking about this today, because we actually had grade level meetings today, and the way that they're doing the reading report card, the report card for schools for next year is changing, and it has this value added into it. Our principal went through the whole method. He's like, there are math teachers in here who can explain this a whole lot better than I can, but it's the same. It's exactly what you're talking about. So
exactly it.
Very timely.
Thank you, Mandy. I'm telling you, I'm hearing from all of my colleagues in most states that, there is a renewed interest. We've been doing this for a while, but, again, it was only like a quarter of a teacher's evaluation. It's going to move to the forefront, folks, I'm telling you. And you've got to be the person that leads your staff and get them to understand that they're going to be responsible for outcomes. There's a lot of teachers that don't believe. They believe as long as I do my part, and if it happens, fine. If it doesn't, that's not on me. Those days are over. And I'm telling you, Mandy's exactly right. Schools and districts and states are moving very quickly into value added. And going to make it a bigger and bigger part of what's going on in schools. It will no longer be just a little thing on the side. It is going to be the driving force now in our schools, because we've lost so much ground during COVID in our schools. It's just not acceptable in our society. Steve, I'll let you.
Yeah, that data is out now. And I was reading several articles about how far the regression was, if you
Mhm.
will, from 2 years ago, pre-COVID. And we weren't exactly shining
Yeah,
before COVID. So it is problematic. I think again, when you talk about value added and we talked about growth model, I'm cognizant that it will stir some uneasiness for some people, but this is not proficiency, this is growth, and there's a difference, and we can work to grow students, and that's going to be an important piece for our selling this to our faculty, and it'll be an important piece for the administration to explain to parents. I know that school down there had a higher proficiency rate, and they're just on top of the world, but we were here and now we're here, and this is how we need to progress. And I think that again, when we talk about the leadership standards, this micro political thing and understanding that we have to communicate better, to market ourselves better, to share with our communities better, that growth is an improvement. This is we can use the athletic analogy all we want, and sometimes we beat it too much, but I think that if you watch a team each year win an additional game or two, that the fan base becomes satisfied that we're getting better every year. And I think we can sell that, and we're going to have to sell that. And so let the Providence Day schools shine, because they're going to shine. They cannot not shine. I mean, they've got all the students that have been given all the opportunities. That said, we can continue our progression, and I'm glad we have these models. But I'm going to tell you something, folks. I tell you, when you read these results, I was on this morning, Dale. I think there was another article or two that talked about the amount of decline that we had. What was it? 6 months decline? Was that it?
yes.
I believe it was 6 months decline in performance, and
10% overall, which would be 6 months. Yes.
yeah, and again, parents aren't going to understand that, but I told one superintendent friend, I said, you better hope we did worse after COVID than we were before COVID.
Yeah.
We're in trouble, because that's meaning that we weren't doing anything before.
Yeah.
I mean, it's what these poor performing or performances on tests do is tell us how important teachers are, how important school is. And we need to pounce on that. And maybe, just maybe, our state legislators in both states will say, we need to invest more. We may need to go to school more than we have gone before. And I know there'll be pushback from educators on going more days, but I'm not sure that we're not going to have to look at going 200 days a year, and ultimately, and paying teachers accordingly, just to get the catch-up model.
Yeah.
And I'm not saying that teachers want that. I'm not saying parents want that. I'm not saying students want that. I'm saying that we are in a catch-up mode, and I believe that with all my heart. And that won't get me elected anywhere.
Yeah. Yeah, that's true. So
you lose 6 months. I mean, we're going to have to do something.
That's
we're
half a
going to
year.
snap our fingers.
Yeah, that's actually more than a half a year.
Yeah.
And so, there's going to be ridiculous pressure on, but like Steve said, this is not about proficiency. This is about growth. I mean, this is talking about moving a kid from 30 to 35. I mean, and that may be a year's growth, but we can't change who we got. See, again, the comparative accountability model is about who you got. I mean, the Providence Days competing against, you know, the Ardent Kill against South Meck or whatever on the high schools. I mean, that's the comparative accountability. That's about who you got, not what you do with them. Growth's about what you do with them. And see, that's what we have to hit upon as school administrators is we've got to make sure our school community understands that your child is learning here. Now, they move from here to here, whether here was 30 or whether here was 80, we're moving them up. Now, you know, we didn't birth these children. They came in at 30. We're just trying to move them. And a lot of that has to do with their demographics again. But we're going to be moving this child. But the biggest thing we have to say to teachers is we're all going to be responsible for outcomes. That we can't just be responsible for inputs. We have to be responsible for outcomes as well. And that's a hard conversation to have. Now, I'm about up to here with all these videos that keep popping up when I, you know, just like tonight when I process this video, I'll have to go to my channel, but all these videos that pop up with another teacher complaining that then, you know, another teacher quit, mic drop, quit, and all that business. For whatever reason, teachers for some reason think that they're the only people who suffered during the pandemic. But if we look at it realistically, a lot of teachers didn't lose their jobs. They were able to work from home. Yes, it was stressful, but it's not like people who lost their jobs and had other things going on. I'm not minimizing what teachers went through, but we're going to have to get out of this "oh, woe is me" because a lot's going to be asked. And we're going to have to lead our faculties through this, and we're going to have to understand that, yes, we want teachers to have good lesson plans and plan well and present good lessons. But we have to be more interested in the kids, you know, if they were pitching, will kids catch it? That achievement piece is going to be greater than it's ever been before. And part of this too is going to be decisions that we're going to have to make about who teaches what. We go back to our master schedule. Remember, this is number 4 on master schedule. First is federal law, then state law, then local board policy, but then performance data. Who teaches what? So let's look at that quickly. I wish I had Robin Hamilton here. Robin works with us. She's an adjunct professor. She's principal at Mason Borough in Wilmington, and she is a EVOS maven. She knows how it works in the real world. So I'm going to use some of her materials here. And you would like her a whole lot better than me or Steve. She is a fabulous lady.
Fantastic.
And so right here, this is from hers. And she simply explains that, you know, looking at your school data, you get, you know, this is, you know, standard error, and which is the same as standard deviation. And so if you're in anywhere from 0 to plus 199 to minus 199, you make growth. Anything above that, you're in, you know, you're in blue, means you exceeded. Met is in this area here from, you know, and then did not meet is red over here. And she explains all these things, how it works and how you're assessed. But here's some of the things that we worked on. Let's look at this. As you can see, teacher A for 3 years, kids in the bottom 2 quartiles, she did a great job with, they all met, or she did a good job with them. And then kids in the 3rd quartile, not met all 3 years, and kids in the upper 2, well, actually quintiles, quintiles met. And so what does this mean? And then look at teacher B. She had, you know, her lower kids met and exceeded, but then her upper kids didn't do well at all. So where would we put these 2 teachers teaching? That's what this tells us is, let's talk about teacher A. Where is the gap in her differentiation?
The mid-level students, she's not as focused on those as much as she is at the other 2 ends. of her data. So whenever she's maybe giving instructions or planning, she's planning for the ones that really need that growth and the ones that are already there. But the ones that fall in the middle, she's not really focused on them as much, or she has
Okay.
not focused on them as much.
All right. Thinking about case study 4 that we have to do this semester that y'all going to present in another 10 days or so. What was that teacher doing that the parents were up in arms about? Have you read that case study yet? Case study 4.
She was focusing on the kids who had disabilities, the special education or special needs kids, and leaving the other kids basically to themselves.
Well, she was having the upper kids teach the lower kids, and they were doing pretty good, but then the middle kids were getting left out. And the parents of the upper kids were angry because all their kids were doing every day was teaching the lowest kids, the EC kids. But this is the kind of data that you get when something like that happens as well. You have a whole, obviously she's not meeting, I mean, she never, the middle kid never gets anything with her. But if, you know, if you've been in that room, you know, you should know whether she's just having these upper kids teach the lower kids. And it might just be that she has a gap in her instruction right here. But you would not put her with a middle group. You know, what you would do is you would focus her staff development on this differentiation here, or you would not put her with those kids. Now, teacher B is pretty easy to figure out. Teacher B works really well with the lower learners, but she does not differentiate and does not do well with the upper kids at all. So these are the things that this data tells us. I'll stop sharing that. So when we're talking about master scheduling and when we get forward to performance data, that's what EVOS will tell us, or SLOs, about each of our teachers. You know, where our professional growth has got to be and development's got to be with those teachers, but it also tells us what their natural proclivities are. Now, what I'm arguing tonight is not unique, it's not intelligent, or anything. What I'm arguing is you've got to change your master schedule. I'm not saying we shouldn't do professional growth activities and try to develop those two teachers, teacher A to be better with the middle child, and I mean teacher A with the middle child and teacher B with the upper child. But in the meantime, can you wait 2 or 3 years till you get them better? Can you stand another year or two of bad test scores? No, you've got to make those changes now. That doesn't mean that you'll never let them teach those kids or those courses again. And that's where that leadership, that micro political that Steve was just talking about, you know, we're going to have some critical conversations with teachers about, here's the performance data. You don't do very well with this. We're going to work with you to do better with it. But for right now, I've got to get you here. And you're going to have to do that all up and down your staff, because performance is, there's 1,000 articles a day. School districts are in turmoil. Superintendents are being fired and quitting. School board members, I mean, it's a pitched battle, folks. We have just gotten mauled by COVID in terms of school performance. And Steve's right. We may have to go to summer school. We may have to go to extended year, extended day. I mean, we're way behind. What was it? Devil's in the bind. He's way behind. He's willing to make a deal. Well, that's where we are right now. Is we're way behind. You know, we're going to have to. But even if we don't get those things, this is more urgent than it's ever been when I've taught this class. Is that we're going to have to look at performance data and make decisions based on that. We can't wait around to try to get teachers better. We're going to try to get them better, but we're going to have to make decisions now, because two things we circle back to, the benediction tonight. Kids don't have to go to low performing schools. They don't have to go to dangerous schools. And we have to know how we can affect each of those, how we can get ourselves where we perform academically, and how we have safe schools for our folks. It's the whole total piece here. You've got to look at both sides of this. They are the two different sides of the same coin. We have to understand the relationship among them. That's
Can
a
I
good
ask a question?
video. Yes.
So I agree with you with what you're saying, but another thing that I was thinking of too when I was looking at our numbers at South, and the placement of our students, I think, is very crucial, very critical. Instead of just randomly placing a kid in a classroom just because we're trying to make numbers up, I think just as how we're thinking about placing the right child with the right teacher so that that teacher can grow that child. Also, I believe that we might have to start looking at the environment that we place those kids in as well. I know we want to have differentiation and inclusion and all of that stuff, but not because we have a second teacher in the room, it means we can have 38 kids in the room and 25 of them being EC 504 and all that beautiful stuff. We're still not meeting the needs of those kids.
Right.
So I think that's one of the other things too that we definitely need to look at to make sure that we are placing the kids where they can grow so that the teachers can also meet the needs that they have.
Yeah. Well, one of the things, there's two things working there. We're not supposed to have 38 in the room. You know, if that's happening, that's, you know, that violates the school activity report. You know, you're not supposed to have over 31. And so that's number one. I mean, somebody's breaking the law there, which is not a good thing. But number two, and I'm using South Meck most specifically in this one. One of our doctorals that finished this past semester was talking about access. Now, she didn't do hers at South Meck because she taught there. She just left and took an administrative job, by the way, in the district. So we did not have her collect data there. But one of the things we got to be careful of is not allowing students to take classes that challenge them so that we put them in an environment where we're sure that they will succeed. And that was her, you know, her entire notion of her dissertation was BIPOC, people of color, access to upper level math courses that, you know, they were discouraged or scheduled in the lower ones simply because they weren't going to do as well. And people were afraid of that. So they discouraged them from being in those classes. And so, but that's part of the discussion that we're going to have as well. Should we put kids only in classes where they need to be in terms of where we'll get the best performance out of them, but then limit their choices and their growth and where they're going to end up or what colleges they can go to. So we have to be careful of that in this model where accountability and growth and student performance is taking on added importance. We've got to be careful not to stick kids in the easier classes that we're sure that they can pass, just so that we can show performance. We still got to challenge our kids and put them in the classes that they need, not just the ones that they want or the ones that are best for us. And that's why we got to have better teachers teaching these classes. They've got to be more focused on those outcomes of working with those kids. But you're exactly right. We've got to look at both ends of that. All right. Any other questions for the evening? All right. I think we're done for tonight. We did pretty good, an hour and 15 minutes tonight. We did okay. Hey. Steve, I'll let you do the benediction.
Well, sometimes it's good when Dale has a cold and doesn't feel good. So to all of you, seriously, my benediction is this. There have been several times where Dale has talked about the importance of building the master schedule. And he's preached this and he's preached this and he's preached this. And I think back to my days as a principal, you know, a couple of decades ago, that all of us, we're human, and we know what we would like to teach. We know what we would like to be our assignments for each year. Shoot, Dale and I know what we want to teach at Gardner Webb. I mean, honestly, so all of you know, we posture, and or let me take that back. I posture because Dale's the one that lets me work in this particular course because he's the MELS person. So we all know what we want to teach. The bottom line is this. It is everything he said tonight comes back to you as the administrator have to put the right person with the right group of kids to get the performance you need out of it. It can no longer be, I'm going to take care of this person because she's valuable or he's valuable to me, and I cannot upset him or her. It comes back to, this is our calling. This is what we have to do. And if you lose people because of that, then so be it. But we cannot allow people just to say, either you let me teach this or I'm not teaching for you. And I think that's been going on too long. And by the way, administrators should not be able to say to the superintendent, either you allow me to be principal at this school or I'll go to another district. And superintendents should not come to the board and say, either you allow me to do blah, 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 or I will go somewhere else. We've got to get out of the threat business and into the performance business. And that's a huge piece. And I've watched Dale now as we transition out of the principalship and into our 601 and into this OMA and the importance of understanding law and understanding duties and responsibilities of the administrator, that hiring and recognizing talent is your number one thing. But the second is putting people with the right responsibilities. And that has to be you. It doesn't have, and it better not be somebody else. It better not be a department that decides who's teaching what. It comes back to the administrator. And if we'll do that, get strong administrators making the right decisions and putting people in the right places, we'll see a turnaround. That's my spiel for tonight, and it's still only 7:20. So
I agree 1,000%. And we'll talk more about hiring the right people next time. So we'll see you next time. Everybody have a
good night, everybody.
Good night.
Valane, hope